Hello, fellow humans. David Suzuki is probably the most famous environmentalist in Canada. He's now 89 years old and has spent decades advocating for the protection of the environment against the violence of capitalism. In a recent interview, he said that it is too late to stop the climate catastrophe, and what we have to do now is hunker down because the units of survival are going to be the local communities. Is David Suzuki right? Is the end of the world inevitable? I absolutely agree with Carney that the economy and market forces need to be used because the economy itself is driving us into the ditch. It's based on the creed of cancer, steady growth, and you can't have endless growth in a finite world. The global economy is far too big. It's got to shrink, and it's got to be distributed more equitably around the world. In my recent essay after Carney's election win, I pointed out at the murky leadership and soapy values Carney was advocating in his book Values. When David Suzuki says the economy has got to shrink, he refers to degrowth. He stops short from actually saying the word, which is fine because we can all say it for him. Mark Carney and the Liberal government are unlikely to ever say degrowth because the word is extremely dangerous for capitalism. It cannot be stolen like the idea of green growth and sustainable development to keep business as usual. Degrowth, by definition, means the end of capitalism. Using the word in North America is political suicide, but the situation in Europe is not too different. Even some non governmental organizations are afraid of using degrowth because their funding comes in part from the government and sometimes from capitalism loving contributors. I have first hand experience with such organizations. It makes me sad that many miss the opportunity to join the revolution by not attempting to mince their words. David Suzuki goes on to say, economic growth, which is the driving force of politics and business, is what determines our fate. That is true, but in a bad way. Of course, if we go back and look at the history of what is known as the Great Acceleration, we see how the material impact of human civilization has increased exponentially in the past 50, 70 years by orders of magnitude, in many cases much faster than the growth of the population. Next, David Suzuki says we are too late to fix the climate catastrophe because we have passed 7 of 9 planetary boundaries, identified by Johan Rockström from the Stockholm Resilience Center. Just 2 years ago, there were 6 boundaries crossed: climate change, biosphere, land use, fresh water, nutrients, and pollution. The boundaries not yet crossed are aerosols and ozone. The 7th boundary, ocean acidification, was just crossed this year, according to a paper published last month in Global Change Biology. This is a massive clusterfuck. If we pass one boundary, we should be shitting our pants. We've passed 7, says David Suzuki. He goes on to say that as an environmentalist, we have failed to shift the narrative and we are still caught up in the same legal, economic, and political systems. Okay, so if the problem is legal, economic, and political, why not bust our brains to dismantle the broken system? Why not attack capitalism head on by naming it and by being explicit that degrowth is the solution? Some of us fighting on the barricades assume too much what others are thinking, especially in North America, where capitalism is a religion. There is a lingering assumption that we cannot say degrowth or name capitalism directly because it might trigger negative emotions. People might shut down mentally and reject radical solutions. I don't think this is the real problem. Getting rid of capitalism is overall an extremely positive agenda. It means getting rid of all billionaires by taxing their wealth, introducing massive progressive taxation in such a way that it would be impossible to accumulate wealth over $5 million, and most importantly, increasing the standard of living for billions of humans. All of this with the aim to establish a global standard of living that is within ecological limits. This is what degrowth is about. This is what it actually means to attack capitalism. We should not care for 1 second that some billionaire is going to cry for losing their mega yachts and mansions. David Suzuki says that surviving the catastrophe is about building resilience in the local community. In his words, find out who on your block cannot walk because you are going to have to deal with that. Who has wheelchairs? Who has fire extinguishers? Where is the available water? Do you have batteries or generators? Start assessing the routes of escape. You are going to have to inventory your community, and that's really what we have to start doing now. Meanwhile, the Earth for All project, a collective of leading economic thinkers, scientists, and advocates, convened by the famous Club of Rome, the BI Norwegian Business School, the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, and the Stockholm Resilience Center, have issued yet another paper where humanity is faced with a choice between too little too late and a giant leap. Guess what the giant leap is about? Changing our economic system. Guess the name of that system? Capitalism. The red line is the giant leap trajectory from now until 2100. Income is going up. Warming stabilizes under 2 degrees. Public spending goes up. Inequality goes down. The observed rate of progress goes up. Well-being goes up. Each of these factors contradict directly the design and dynamic of capitalism. Back to the initial question. Is it too late to save ourselves? Of course, it is not too late if a vast majority of humans become aware of degrowth and speak openly against capitalism. But ideas take a while to disseminate. Until then, some humans, already aware of these problems, can carry the torch for the rest of us. Let us help them and let them do their civic duty, which they often do at the great personal cost. The following is a recipe for a revolution that would fit on a napkin that you can show your parents and your friends. Engage in massive anti-capitalist civil disobedience. Block all banks that support fossil fuels. Remember these numbers: $5 million maximum wealth and 1 to 5 maximum wage ratio from the lowest wage to the highest wage. Disrupt the activities of all billionaires and multimillionaires, those with wealth above $5 million, until they will give away their fortunes willingly. This napkin-sized revolution would be a great start. Make no mistake, planetary health is so bad, and capitalism has destroyed so much in its course. There's simply no time to use soft words out of fear that we might be misunderstood by people. If we just took our time and explained these basic facts about the condition of life on Earth, I think we would get enough popular support to revolutionize our economic system. What is certain is that all of you watching this video will be witnesses to massive scale collapse of the environment, massive crisis of capitalism, and massive disruption of the human civilization. If we want to live, there's no option but to overthrow capitalism and replace it with an economy for life. These are the most critical years in the history of human civilization. Thank you for supporting me on Patreon. Sharing and helping is believing. Be well and increase the peace.